The opinions expressed on this program represent the viewpoints of individual authors or contributors and do not necessarily reflect those of Troy University. This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate to have as our guest one of the leading candidates for the U.S. Senate, Mr. Morgan Murphy. Morgan, good to have you on the show.
Hey, Steve, it's great to be with you.
Morgan spells his name M-U-R-P-H-Y. Y'all probably see it on the screen. You know, I'm from Troy, and I live on Murphy Street. You know, some of you, your ancestors spell their name, but they were the first settlers of Troy.
That's right. My family's been in Andalusia for 10 generations. We got here before it was a state.
You may have had some of those Murphys that spell their name, they spell it M-U-R-P-H-R-E-E, Murphy.
Murphy.
I live on, my house in Troy is on Murphy Street.
How about that?
Did you know that? I haven't told you
I
that?
didn't know. No, you didn't tell me that.
It was one of the historic streets in Troy, one of the main arteries. And my little house in Troy is right there on Murphy Street. I've lived there, had a house there 25 years or longer, and grew up in that neighborhood on Murphy Street. And there's an old cemetery right across from the First Baptist Church. The Murphy family were the first family that settled Troy.
How about that?
The Murphys. But there's some spell it like you that live in Pike, Kansas, the Murphys. But you know that Three-Notch Street in Andalusia, your family, it comes through Troy.
Yeah.
You knew that.
Yeah.
Andrew Jackson
carved it all the way.
It out. You knew the story of that, didn't you?
Yeah, you can't beat. My mom and daddy both were from Andalusia and Covington County, and my grandparents were all from. That's how I got my name, Morgan Murphy, because it was the surnames of the two families that were all
is that
friends.
right? They came.
Yeah, my dad was introduced to my mama the day she was born. He was held up. He was a year old. He was held up, introduced, because the grandparents were all friends, and man, the sun and moon rose and set over my mother's head.
Morgan Murphy, there were two family names.
That's right.
But now, so you weren't born in Andalusia, but how many generations go back to Covington
10.
County?
So
to Andalusia?
To Andalusia. My uncle is the lawyer Murphy there. He's got the practice on the square there in Andalusia, has forever. His father was the lawyer Murphy. His father was the lawyer Murphy and a judge, and his daddy was the lawyer Murphy. I don't know how I escaped that particular guillotine, but I did not become a lawyer, but the rest of the family has been forever in Andalusia.
Well, you know, Andalusia has a history of having good lawyers.
Oh, yeah. No, it was Andalusia I was brought up being told that Andalusia was the center of the known universe, and I've never been able to disprove that. I mean, my whole family loves Andalusia. But I grew up in Birmingham. My parents moved to Birmingham to go to college at Birmingham Southern College, and they stayed.
What, the one from Covington County went to Birmingham Southern?
Yeah, both mom and daddy.
They both, your mom and daddy worked?
Well, actually, the real story is my father went to the University of Alabama like his father, and his great-grandmother was the first woman to attend the University of Alabama.
Uh-huh.
Right? Yeah, but then my mama decided to go to BSC, and Dad was in love with her, so he transferred.
But they both came from Andalusia.
Both from Andalusia.
But both went to Birmingham Southern.
And they both went to Southern.
And that's why they settled in Birmingham.
That's how they got there.
Uh-huh. Your house I've been to there in Birmingham, was that your family's house?
No, I bought that house in 2005, sight unseen.
It's an old, beautiful house.
Thank you. It was a dump when I bought it. If I'd smelled it, would never have purchased it, because it smelled like cats and mice. And we took down the ceiling in the kitchen, and about 10,000 acorns and a bunch of petrified squirrels fell out. It was a project. It's been a labor of love.
Morgan, now, did you go to Birmingham Southern?
I did. I went to Birmingham Southern. My sister went to Birmingham Southern. My aunts and uncles all went to Birmingham Southern. It's a great tragedy to lose that college.
I bet y'all got mad about that, didn't you?
We were pretty upset about
we couldn't help it, though, wasn't?
No, it just mismanagement. And I knew that's the way it was going to go. I was very close to Dr. Birdie.
I loved him, too.
I loved him. And I was close to his...
Hey, I knew him at the University of Alabama. He was at the University of Alabama, started a new college there.
Well, his sons, Mark and Scott are my age, and I kind of grew up going in and out of the housing, Boy Scouts and all those things. And Dr. Birdie, I just admire. He was a
Great guy.
a class act.
Sure was. Brilliant man.
Really brilliant.
He knew every student on campus.
No, it was amazing. He would run in. He'd say he knew everybody's name. He'd say, Morgan, I ran into your cousin Michael, and he have an older brother named Martin down in Andalusia, and I ran into them, and they should really think about coming to the college. I mean, he just had that. He was incredible. He would have made a great politician, Steve.
Oh, unbelievable.
But Dr. Birdie, when he left, I went to a dinner party to meet the new president, David Pollock, and I was seated to the right of the new president, and I asked him about the president's mansion, because I knew that home well, and he said something.
Was it on campus?
It was on campus, and he said, "Well, we're not moving in." He said, there was a lot of, a lot of stuff in that house, a lot of fine antiques and a lot of junk teaks, and the Birdies didn't know the difference. And the hostess said, David, Morgan is close friends with the Birdies' sons, Scott and Mark, which is the Southern equivalent of taking an enormous iron skillet and hitting him upside the head with it.
Yeah.
My friends came with me at the time, said that was the most uncomfortable dinner they'd ever been through, because I got into it with him. He misspent a lot of college
He's the one
funds
ran
in
the
life.
ground. Yeah.
He overspent, borrowed against the endowment, got the college upside down in debt. And so I really, there were presidents that came after him that did, yeoman's job trying to correct those ills, but it was
Well,
too
Morgan,
much.
did you go into the Navy as soon as you got out of Southern? What's your
No.
naval experience?
After I got out of Birmingham Southern, Steve, I went up to New York. I wanted to be a writer. So
I remember that, that's right.
I joined the staff of Vanity Fair as an intern.
Had you majored in English at Southern?
I had. I was
You
English.
knew you liked to
English.
write, didn't
Yeah, I've always been a writer. And so I wrote, I was the editor of the Hilltop News.
Okay.
And so I went to New York, and in the 90s, it's hard for young people to imagine now how powerful magazines were back
That's
then. It was
right.
like Instagram and Facebook all rolled together, and only a few gatekeepers.
So you went straight from Southern to Vanity Fair?
And we spent more on champagne, I think, that year than the magazine did, than they have in their entire budget today. But it was high rolling. It was
Now,
a
when
gravy
did-
train with biscuit wheels.
Did
Then I
you-
went to Forbes magazine.
Forbes after that. How many years were you at Forbes?
2.
Did you meet Steve Forbes? and
Oh
everything?
yeah, Steve Forbes would spot me in the company gym. Forbes was amazing too, and this is where kids today just can't imagine it. I would walk through the lobby of the Forbes building on Fifth Avenue, past the largest collection of Fabergé eggs in the world. Malcolm Forbes collected Fabergé eggs. He dated Elizabeth Taylor. He had Abraham Lincoln's top hat. He had a bottle of Thomas Jefferson's Chateau Lafite sitting there. It was just being from Birmingham. So Birmingham.
Malcolm Forbes was Steve Forbes' father.
That was his dad. In Birmingham, no matter how wealthy people are, and is this really true today, they don't flash the cash like that. Everybody drove a Buick when I was growing up. The president of the bank drove a Buick. The mayor of the town drove a Buick. Everybody had a Buick. And my dad always said if you drove a Cadillac, you had more dollars than cents. Right? But when I moved to New York and saw, Malcolm Forbes had a chateau in France, and then he had a balloon. He liked a hot air balloon. He had a hot air balloon shaped like the chateau in France. And it was really just mind-blowing for a young man of 24. But that's where I learned to be a reporter and to fact-check everything. So Forbes still had that old tradition that seems quaint now of you had to have 2 facts for every fact you presented. You had 2 sources for every fact you presented in the magazine. The editor was a man named Jim Michaels, who had broken Mahatma Gandhi's death. He was an amazing editor. We were all terrified of him. And that's where I first interviewed Donald Trump, actually, because we all had Trump's number, because if you had a really boring story that was dry, you just call Donald Trump, and he'd give you a great quote, and it would make your story interesting. I did a story on Alabama. This was 1998. I did a story about how great it was that Mercedes-Benz would move to Alabama. Now, the rest of the financial press at that time thought it was a terrible idea. The Wall Street Journal, the lead was Alabama, a state first in little but football, has given the largest tax break in corporate history to a luxury automobile manufacturer. And the rest of the financial press, Barron's, Fortune, all kind of carried that same vein that we were a bunch of rubes for giving that much money to Mercedes to build its first factory outside of Germany. But I wrote it was a positive thing, and I got called into Jim Michaels' office. You never wanted to be called into Jim Michaels' office, and he didn't even look up. He was maybe 5 foot tall. He didn't even look up from his desk, and he had his red pencils there, and he said, "Morgan, we're not running this story." And I was 24, and I said, "Well, respectfully, sir, why not?" And he said, "Because at Forbes, we don't believe the government should pick winners and losers." And I paused, and I said, "Well, don't we believe in lower taxes?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Might not Alabama giving Mercedes-Benz a tax break also encourage other states to give their manufacturing concerns tax breaks, and might not bring down the tax rate overall on manufacturers?" And he said, "You can run the damn story." And I did. And that was 30 years ago. And today, just Mercedes and its associated suppliers, I'm not talking about ThyssenKrupp, Boeing, Honda, Hyundai, and all the other manufacturing companies that have moved to Alabama since Mercedes did. Just Mercedes and its suppliers brought in $892 million to the state coffers last year alone in taxes. It was a great investment. And the people that work there in Vance make great livings. They're great salaries. It's one of the reasons I'm running for Senate, because I believe in manufacturing. And the best part about Donald Trump's Make America Great Again is that first word, make. We have to make things in this country to be a powerful country with a powerful economy.
So, when did you go in the Navy? When did you, we came back home and worked for Progressive.
Yeah, I moved home. I joined the Navy in '99 when I was still in New York, and I joined. I just felt a calling to do it. My grandparents, my granddads had both served in the big ones, as they called it, in World War II, and my family's had a long history of military service. So I joined the Navy as an officer.
You came back to
in '99.
Birmingham with the Progressive.
With Southern Living.
Southern
John
Living,
Floyd, the editor of Southern Living, called me in New York and said, how would you like to move home? And I'd written a story for them about my grandmother in Andalusia, and it had gotten a lot of good reader feedback in the magazine. So he invited me to come be the travel editor and food critic for the magazine. So I moved home to do that.
Would you go out and check, talk about the restaurants there?
Oh yeah, I've written 4 cookbooks about it. I ate, I've eaten almost everywhere in the South. So I went all around all of our 18 southern states. Southern
so
Living.
it wasn't just Birmingham. You went all over the South.
all over the South, and so from Maryland, which Southern Living claims is Southern, from Maryland all the way up Texas.
So you were the food critic for the whole Southern Living magazine.
I was, and it was the
How did you
greatest
decide
job
what
ever.
restaurants you were going to critique?
Everybody always asked me that. They said, "Well, how did you know where to eat?" And I would ask I'd ask the chefs a lot of times, like, "Where are you eating in town?" And you'd get great advice. The other people I'd ask, now these are my secrets, Steve. We're going to give these away. Realtors. They a lot of times know exactly where to eat
Why
in
realtors?
town because they're out and about all day, or at least they used to be prior to Zillow. But that's who I would ask. And
Let me ask you, which restaurants in Alabama did you critique that you ranked them?
My favorites? Oh, it's funny because Jerry Shriver, the food critic for USA Today, was a friend, and he came down to Birmingham, and we met at Highlands Bar and Grill, which is, of course, the granddaddy of all the greatest restaurants in Birmingham. And Jerry just raved about it, as everybody did about Highlands.
Y'all meet Stent and everything?
Oh, yeah. And so Jerry was like, "This is the best thing." Oh, he's always there. He's still there. If you go to Bottega now, you'll see Frank. And that's the key to a great restaurant, is seeing the proprietor and the restaurant owner right there on the spot. But Jerry went on and on about how great Highlands was. And I said, "Yeah, this is amazing. But if you really want to eat, and I mean really eat, you need to go to Nicky's West." Not Nicky's. Now, the family had a feud. I said, you go to Nicky's West out on 78, which is next to the Kimberling truck parts, and you need to pack heat, right, if you go. But they've got 75 vegetables and everything that'll fly, crawl, jump, or swim spread out dead on a hot bar. And they get 2,500 people a day at Nicky's West. And Frank said, "Well, that sounds fine, but I don't think I have time to go before I leave town. I said, okay. My dad called me 3 days later. He said, Morgan, you're never going to believe this. I said, what, Dad? He said, Nicky's West has been ranked by USA Today as one of the top 5 restaurants in the world.
So he went by there?
Yeah, he went.
Without telling you?
He went. And
I love to eat there.
Oh, my gosh. I featured them in my 3rd book, I think. The banana pudding there was made for 57 years by the same lady, a lady named Miss Carrie Hudson, made the banana pudding. And
did you include the Bright Star in there?
I did. I'd written about all the old ones like that. And a
What
lot
about
of
the
new ones,
Mobile
too.
restaurants? Any good Mobile restaurants?
And now you're putting me on the spot. Now, I haven't done this for, 10 years. So there are a lot of great ones, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, now you've been spending a lot of time in Washington, and tell us about how you worked for Trump and Tuberville, haven't you?
That's right. That's right. People say, why'd you leave that job? You had the best job in the world. You were doing what I want to do when I retire, which is travel and eat. And I said, yeah, but I just couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. I watched a lot of our culture slipping, and that's why I went to go work for Trump in 2020. My dad died in 20 during COVID, and we couldn't bury Dad. We weren't allowed to have a funeral for him. And later, 3 weeks later, they buried George Floyd, and 6,000 people came to his funeral. And I sat there, and my dad was an Eagle Scout and a great man, and I said, this is not how government is supposed to work. We're not supposed to shut down the common man. You shouldn't be able just to have freedoms because you're famous or infamous. We should all have the same freedom. So I went to work for the president, and Trump won. I worked for the Secretary of Defense. I was a spokesperson for the press secretary for the SecDef.
Who was Secretary of Defense?
Initially, it was Mark Esper, and that was not the best of experiences, I can tell you. And that was my first exposure to politics at that level.
Was Sessions, he was Attorney General at that time?
No, he had left by that time.
He had left by that time.
Yeah. But Esper really got sideways with the president because he said, we're in a very similar situation now, where the president's on the cusp of invoking the Insurrection Act in Minnesota. And in my opinion, it would be completely justified to do that. In the summer of 20, Washington was on fire. It looked like there was a hurricane coming. Every store from Tiffany to Starbucks was boarded up. I mean, boarded up, and spray paint graffiti everywhere. I have pictures I can show you that are just awful. The town was under full revolt, and so were places like Seattle. You remember the Free State of Seattle.
Yeah.
It was an issue we settled in Alabama a long time ago. In 1865, that got settled here, where we thought we maybe had states' rights over the federal government. But they're still in blue states and blue cities fighting it out with us that they have supremacy over the federal government. But Mark Esper got out in front of the president, and he said that he didn't believe that we needed to invoke the Insurrection Act.
Didn't you go to work for Tuberville sometime?
I did. So I stayed with Trump until the very end. So Chris Miller and Kash Patel became my new bosses 75 days before the.
Where were they now at that time?
Chris Miller became the Secretary of Defense, and his deputy was Kash Patel.
So you've been in Washington how many years now?
Since 2020.
Is that all, just 6
5
years?
Yes,
5
6
years.
years. So Kash said to me.
So 5 years ago, you were Southern Living. Is that?
No, that was 2015 was my last time at Southern Living. Kash said, Morgan, you need to stay in Washington and fight. So that's when I went to work for Tuberville. I joined his staff as National Security Advisor.
When did Tuberville go to the Senate? 5 years by that time?
He joined the Senate. He was elected in 20, and his first day was, I think, January the 5th. 2021. I interviewed with him that day.
Morgan, the reason I get around that because you being a food critic, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. Washington, because of all the lobbying and special interests, has a reputation of having fine restaurants.
It's an expense account town.
It really is.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, what changed back to the eating thing? You've been in Washington 5 years in the Trump administration and Tuberville administration. What are y'all's favorite eating places? When I go visit with Shelby, that Capitol Grill was considered.
It still is.
It's like it was top 5, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Shelby loved to go there, but Shelby went everywhere. He was such a power that when he walked in, when I walk in with Shelby, it's like the king has arrived.
Oh, yeah. He's the head of appropriations, my man. So
I think I've told that lobbyists, and Shelby never would be that he was modest about this, I perceived there'd be some lobbyists sitting 2 tables over for us for U.S. Steel or American Express or somebody, that I think that they would send in expense reports saying they were were having dinner with Shelby because they'd find out where Shelby was going to have dinner with somebody, a lobbyist or some friend from Alabama, and he would. I swear, I believe they would do something to make us think. Shelby would say, "I think they're probably bidding their clients."
There are no secrets in Washington. And, two people can keep a secret as long as one of them is dead. And around town, people know where senators like to go and where they're going to be, and you find out real fast. You find out real fast how word travels.
Morgan, Heffin, there wasn't no question about Heffin went down to the Monocle.
Everybody goes to the Monocle still. That's the watering hole for the Senate.
He and Highwood Baker would go down there together. Even though Heffin was a Democrat and Baker was a Republican from the South, and Baker drank more than he ate, but Heffin was a teetotaler. Do you know that?
I did not know
he
that.
He was a teetotaler, and he was a son of a Methodist minister, and he wouldn't wear it on his sleeve, but he was very religious, and he was a Marine. A veteran Marine too.
Now, he could eat though.
He ate, boy. He ate.
Could eat.
He'd eat Baker's supper. I'd be on the Bright Star with Heffin. He'd eat his meal and say, "Tree, you gonna eat that?" He'd eat the rest of my supper.
Yeah.
He'd eat my supper.
Did you ever find out who No Tie is? He'd always told the story about No Tie.
Yeah. I think No Tie was made up.
Yeah.
But he had a repertoire of jokes.
Yeah, he did.
He actually, when he heard I was writing a book about Alabama history, of political stories, came out about 10 or 15 years ago, called Goats and Governors, and it was 6 decades. He says, "Tree, I'm going to give you my favorite jokes." And back of that book, Heffin's favorite jokes.
That's great.
He had some good ones. He had some great stories. He was a great guy. He'd never deviate. He went to Monocle every time he ate supper. Ate 2 meals down there.
Yeah.
He knew where every barbecue place in the state was.
Oh, yeah.
He was grazed. He'd eat 2 or 3 pieces of, the story was you don't get between Heffin, a microphone, and a buffet line. With an old guy, he'd eat like a horse. I mean to get off on that, but
no,
but you know what to do as a U.S. senator right off the bat, wouldn't you?
That's right.
You
learn. It's not an entry-level job. The Senate's complicated. The Senate has a lot of different personalities. It's a place that's driven by culture and tradition, and the rules are, I'm not boring your listeners with the rules of the filibuster and rules of cloture and all the different things that the Senate has. But it's not someplace, there are a lot of people who say, yeah, I think it's a great idea to run for Senate and do, but it's like saying you want to be in the NBA, but you've never picked up a basketball.
Exactly.
That's
a good analogy.
It's a complicated place,
and
you
really
need to know what you're doing there. You get run over. That's why Katie Britt's been so successful, because Katie was a former staffer like me, and she was able to go in day one. She knew all the pieces and the parts on the chessboard, and she was able to get the Laken Riley Act over the line in her first year, when most freshman senators don't get any legislation over the line in their first term, much less alone their first year. No. And that's what I think Alabama needs, is some experience, because we've got 2 freshman senators. We're underpowered in seniority, and that's really how things work in the Senate, is through seniority. That's why Shelby was so powerful.
Ain't no question about it. I went as Shelby's guest at the State of the Union the first year Trump was president. Shelby, they ain't gonna have but one guest, and most of them have their wives, but Nett, Shelby's wife, was sick and she couldn't go, so Shelby asked to be his guest. And I sat there and I got looking at all the people sitting next to me were all veterans, like 30-year senators. Like the guy that was Leahy from Vermont was there, and the guy from Mississippi who lost his mind.
Yeah.
Not Trent.
That's why we have to be real careful who we send to the Senate. And Alabama really needs to know their record and how they're going to vote, because it's once you get into the Senate, we've got a lot of fossils walking around the Senate. Once you get in, it's really hard to get them out.
It is. A funny story about Katie. Of course, I've been friends with Katie since she was a little girl at Enterprise High School. She was governor of Girls State and then president of SG at Alabama. And she was close to me and Shelby. Worked for Shelby, of course. And she told me the first week she went into the Senate gym as a freshman senator, and Grassley was in there, who's now the senior senator from Iowa, Indiana. Where's he from?
Yeah, Chuck Grassley.
Where's he from?
Iowa.
Iowa, yeah. He's he's 90 years old. He's been there 100 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, Grass looked over there and says, "Young lady, you're a freshman senator. You were a lot more powerful when you were chief of staff at Shelby than you are as a freshman senator."
That's right.
Did he tell you that story?
That's right.
She said, because Shelby had so much power.
Yeah.
Grass says, you were more powerful.
Oh, that's right.
being
No,
his
he
chief
wasn't
of staff."
exaggerating. He wasn't exaggerating
As a freshman
at all.
senator.
That's true. It's hard to, Tuberville was able to be successful as a freshman, and I watched it because he's famous. And he parlayed that fame into influence. There's a lot of soft power because people want to talk to him.
Yeah.
We'd have titans of industry, admirals and generals and CEOs, and they'd come in and they'd give their very important presentation. And at the end of it, they'd all clear their throats and act like little boys. You remember that game back in 1987? And he'd say, yeah. He remembered every game, of course.
I had him on this show when he first ran,
Yeah.
sitting where you are, when Tub was on. Had him on twice, and we got talking about football more than we did politics.
Well, we've talked about food more than we have about politics.
Well, that's true.
so
We
that's
have,
right.
haven't we?
Yeah, Coach was funny, though. He's got a great sense of humor, too, and that helps in the Senate. I asked him one day, I was his national security advisor through all the holds over taxpayer-funded abortion. And, man, when you talk about getting heat, he got a lot of heat from the Democrats, but he got a ton of heat from Republicans, too, and it was lonely for a while. And we were walking out of the Senate one night really late together, and he was standing in the breach, really by himself on an issue that he felt morally was just wrong, and he was going to make a stand, and he didn't care what people said to him about it. But people said some hateful things, and I asked him about that, and he said, well, try losing a game on a Saturday night in Alabama. I have yet to have anyone throw a beer bottle at my head here in the Senate.
I love it. Well, we got to close on that one, Morgan. That's a good story. I like that. That's a good close. I never had a beer bottle thrown at me like I did when I lose the ball game on Saturday.
He knows what the pressure's like.
He does.
Yeah.
Folks, I guess tonight's been Senate candidate Morgan Murphy running for the U.S. Senate. The primary is right around the corner, and we thank you viewers for watching. Thank Morgan for being on our show. Thank y'all so much. Hope you tune in next week for Alabama Politics.
This has been Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, a production of Troy University Television. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Troy University, its administration, faculty, staff, or students.